Welcome to Transform Now, the podcast brought to you by robotic process automation pioneer SS&C Blue Prism. Digital transformation has the potential to reshape the way companies service their customers, engage their employees, and manage their operations. Whether you're looking to develop strategies, tactics, or best practices to positively impact the future of work, or you're curious to see how other companies have successfully navigated their digital transformation programs, then this podcast is for you. We're here to help you transform now.
Hello, everyone. I'm Brad Hairston with SS&C Blue Prism. Welcome to the Transform Now podcast. Today, I'm privileged to have as my guest Sarah Burnett, Chief Technology Evangelist at the AI company KYP. Sarah is also an author, and her most recent book is titled The Autonomous Enterprise, Powered by AI. Sarah and I will be discussing her thoughts on improving employee experience and efficiency through productivity mining. Welcome, Sarah. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself before we get started?
Hello, Brad, and thank you for the introduction, and apologies in advance for my croaky voice. I'm recovering from a cold. About myself, well, I've been working in this field for longer than I care to remember, and that is technology as a whole. After university, I started in hardware development. I then moved into software and then project and program management. And since 2006, I've been an industry analyst. For 8-9 years, I set up and led the research program on intelligent automation at Everest Group. And that was my last kind of full-time work as an industry analyst. But I've moved on. So as you very kindly mentioned, I'm Chief Technology Evangelist at KYP.ai, but I have a portfolio of jobs. And the reason we're talking about KYP.ai because it's a productivity mining company, and that's very relevant to our conversation today.
Excellent. You didn't mention it, but I know that you're very active in supporting and cultivating women in technology through a number of organizations. Glad to know that about you as well. I want to start by just talking about your book, The Autonomous Enterprise, Powered by AI. I have not yet had the chance to read it. Unfortunately, I'm a little backed up on my books right now, but I do have colleagues at Blue Prism who have read it and spoken very, very highly of it. Tell us more about the book and what prompted you to write it.
Well, I've got a lot to say. I've been working in this field, particularly intelligent automation, where I was seeing a lot of exciting developments in AI. And I just had so much to say. And, some of the innovations that were being made possible by AI were absolutely mind-blowing. And I wanted to educate the market, to let the business leaders and business decision makers know that AI is here. It's being used today, and it's not some terrifying sci-fi kind of thing that might come and kill us all in the future. Well, that might happen, but that's a whole other thing. But, as things are today, it's a fantastic innovation itself that is powering other innovations. So using it, organizations can become the disruptors rather than disrupted. And also, it's really advancing the levels of automation that you can achieve in the enterprise. And so the title of the book, The Autonomous Enterprise, and I highlight how we are on this journey already. It started. And the sooner you get to grips with it, the better, and understand how it's going to affect us all, how it's going to affect organizational models, the way that we work, our jobs for humans in the future, and the ethics of it as well. And I've included 4 detailed case studies. So treat it as a primer for AI in business.
Interesting. I love the name of the book. I love the word autonomous because intelligent automation itself is becoming more autonomous. I think you would agree. I mean, we're teaching digital workers to program and self-heal and self-govern, all these incredible things, which will take us into yet a whole nother, phase of intelligent automation. Well, let's talk about your current company that you're a part of, KYP.ai. My understanding is it provides a productivity mining capability. Can you explain to us what that is exactly.
Yes. So it's using process intelligence. So it's capturing process intelligence and providing insights on how people, processes, and technology interact and what causes friction in those interactions. Basically, friction hampers work and reduces productivity. And so the name productivity mining. For example, I'm sure you wouldn't be surprised to find out that a lot of people, particularly skilled people, are spending time every day cutting and pasting data in from one system into another. The level of the amount of time spent is the surprising thing. So some of our clients have found that they've got really expensive personnel who are spending 30% of their time in really mind-bogglingly boring work, which is cutting and pasting data. And this is something that could be easily addressed through automation, through solutions such as RPA, very easily, but it's still going on. So immediately highlighting the problem and providing the actionable insight and really the business case for it. Because by the time you get to 30%, it's difficult to work out how expensive that is in terms of people's time and productivity and salaries. Yeah.
So, Sarah, what gap is this AI capability filling in the market right now? What do you think makes it so valuable?
Well, it's automating data capture for process optimization. So another level of automation in a different, in a different area of business, and capturing data that then allows organizations to make informed decisions about transformation and productivity improvements. If you do this manually, you're talking about huge teams of people, particularly in large global business services where they've got thousands of people doing similar processes in different geographies across the world. You're talking about not only having to hire hundreds of specialists whose job it is to review processes and optimize them, but also then involving thousands of people where you often have to synchronize their time so you can get them together and understand what they're doing, how they're doing, then use loads of sticky notes and loads of flow charts and mapping to understand what's going on. So you're automating something that would be incredibly long-winded to do manually. At the end of the day, what you get is significant efficiencies in that process, leading to further efficiencies. And of course, these kinds of friction points can cost other types of, not just money terms, but other things like, if your staff are really frustrated because they're always a blockage at a certain point in a process, they're going to get really disengaged, aren't they? And not a good thing to do when there's already global skills shortage.
Okay. Sarah, perhaps you could share some of the interesting facts about the state of work that your customers have learned from using productivity mining technology.
So beyond the sort of very business-like depths in processes that could be simplified and automated and so on, I can tell you about some of the funniest things that they found. For example, where some of the guidelines that a contact center group of staff were given was very kind of use of spiritual terminology to finish calls, which wasn't really appropriate for a global, customer base. So that was quite funny. And people were scratching their heads thinking, where's that come from? And wondering how to address that problem. And I've mentioned the cutting and pasting. But the other thing is people spending a lot of time in chat channels answering what should be frequently asked questions that are very easily handled by a chatbot. So, for example, this one, I'm thinking of a food delivery company. It's about, how long before my food gets delivered? Can I get a refund? Can I get this and that with it? Really simple things that a very easily deployed chatbot could handle. And the customer that I'm thinking of who's done that has now ended up with its guild personnel only ever spending around 4 or 5% of their time in the chat channel, only when the chatbot can't handle the questions. So this is really a good example of where simple things have been identified that can be automated and help the employees do higher value work.
Right. Got it. How does productivity mining empower employees so they can improve their own work experience and become stakeholders in true process transformation?
Well, it can do that in a number of ways. Firstly, they can access the insights on their own work and see, look back and reflect on how things have gone and what could be done better. So that's their own, they can make those decisions for themselves. Secondly, they can actually find the friction in their own, what is stopping them from delivering work and maybe failing to meet their target. So it could be that they're actually collecting evidence that they can then show their supervisors and build the business case for change. The supervisors can see the bigger picture and they can see how work is allocated to different members of the team or to different teams where there's more capacity. Maybe the shifts could be improved. So it's about balancing the workload. So you don't get one team that is really overstretched, another that is sitting there twiddling their thumbs, because their boredom also leads to people leaving and attrition. Also, by removing the bottlenecks and automating the mundane, the repetitive work, you're helping employees do more satisfying, more higher value work. I found a Gartner the data that I thought you'd be interested in it, and that is employees' intent to stay in a job drops with each friction point at work, dropping by 5% when friction points reach 9 and beyond. So even with one, I think the data was something like the intent to stay drops by 50%. So really significant, and it needs to be addressed.
It's startling.
Isn't it? Yes.
What about the times when employees are not on their computers? How do you factor that into the analysis of how work is being done?
So that is all captured and shown. So when it comes to review times or optimization planning, that can all be discussed. So things like regular meetings, if you have a meeting every day at 9 o'clock, then of course all the team know and the team leaders know. But in manual work where the steps aren't done within an application that's already been captured, then I think that can be all discussed at review time. So really, it's about the approach you take to this. It's not about pointing fingers at people and saying you weren't on a system at this time. It's about how can we improve the overall performance, what can we learn, and what's the best practice that we can apply. So it's really about, how you take these things on board and how you handle insights that you get.
Makes sense. Sarah, in a lot of the pieces that you've written, you mentioned the importance of achieving a state of flow of work. Tell us more about flow and the science behind it, if you would.
Yes, well, it's a fascinating concept that was put forward by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. And that is when work is the right mix of interesting, challenging, and enjoyable, then productivity increases significantly. I think we've all experienced that, haven't we? When we found something that we really enjoy doing, we focus, we sort of shut at the outside world, and, time passes really quickly and we get a lot done. And the important thing also is clarity of objectives and goals that you want to achieve. So once you get into that kind of flow, it's, there have been trials done by very large organizations that show that you can get significantly improved productivity, and actually work becomes more enjoyable as well. And so with productivity mining, you can identify your superheroes, people who are working really hard and long hours, people who are stretched, and you can address those, the less. You sort of need to achieve the right level of a balance of challenging, having free time, having productive time. So it's all about getting the right balance.
Okay. Well, process intelligence technology, you mentioned that, as a big piece of this, has definitely surged in recent years. And we at Blue Prism are seeing a huge spike of activity around this. A lot of our customers are starting to use process and task mining as a way of identifying and prioritizing automation opportunities. What is your view of the space of process intelligence adoption, maturity, and where productivity mining fits into that?
Well, I think the technologies have been around, some of the technologies have been around for a while, and it was the rise of RPA that boosted the market for process intelligence and specifically to scale automation. And I think a lot of organizations approach it that way, but as goes by and we learn about these other benefits and outcomes that I've mentioned, I think the adoption maturity will increase and it won't be entirely focused on automation. It'll also be about these other kind of benefits that I've been mentioning. But I think it's here to stay. I think it's really going to power automation and reaching the autonomous enterprise. And in fact, it was because of my research for my book and seeing how data is going to be king really in everything. And, the fact that powered by AI, you can do so much and the insights you can analyze and see the opportunities in your data, that I was attracted to process intelligence and, led me to join KYP.ai. So I think it is very much the technology of now, and it will be increasingly getting more powerful as time goes by, and people will see many more use cases for it. It is not going to negate the process automation opportunities that it brings, but it will be complemented with these other use cases. So it's about maturity of adoption increasing.
Do you find that productivity mining is even more important to companies now that many more jobs have gone remote?
Yes, I believe so. It's another capability for managing a mix of remote and office work. And some will focus on the monitoring capability to spot issues like absenteeism. But there's so much more, to it than that. So, for example, finding opportunities to improve processes. Just imagine people working at home, not having quite the same level of support as they would get in the office. So maybe helping them by creating virtual assistants, helping them by creating knowledge bases that are much richer and much more up to date. The trouble with knowledge bases is they quickly fall out of date and they become useless. So, helping them deliver work better when they're working remotely. I think all of these things are really important. And with the sort of data that process intelligence captures, I think you can create these richer sources of information. So you can do next best action better. You can do online guides. You can create opportunities for multi-skilling, which is where you create robots that can specialize in certain things, maybe when the employee doesn't quite have all the skills for it, knows something about it, but doesn't have the detailed skills. So that's another way to help them deal with things that might go their way, but they don't have the knowledge to deal with it. So, it's really improving support and hand-holding, as well as the other side, which is monitoring, of course.
Interesting. You mentioned that there is a bit of a stigma of technology that's still looking over our shoulder and monitoring what we're doing. And that's something that people are a bit averse to. And I know productivity mining is different than that, but how do you encourage your customers to position this with their employees so that they don't view it that way? They really know that this is something that's going to be helpful to them and make their jobs more rewarding, more fulfilling, etc.
I think it's about being open and honest. I think it's about bringing them on board from day one when you're thinking about it, letting them know why you're doing it, letting them know the good, the bad, the ugly, the all aspects of it and how they're going to handle whatever is the area of concern for the employee. So letting them see what is being captured about them, letting them decide whether they want it anonymized. There are all kinds of measures that people can apply, but it's really about being open and honest and getting them on board from day one and setting up proper governance and, frameworks within which it operates so people feel comfortable with it.
Okay. I didn't ask this at the beginning. Maybe I should have, but how do you explain the acronym KYP? Makes me think of know your customer, but I know it's different than that.
So it stands for many things. In fact, our logo is KYP. It's squared, I think. Basically, it's know your process, know your potential, know your people. And, as some people say, it's know your place as well. If you're talking about your wife, it's quite funny.
I love it. It means different things to different people, right?
Yes.
You can tailor it to your client and what they really need. So that's neat. And Sarah, one other thing I read about or I saw noted in some of the things you've written, you mentioned this concept of execution automation. What is that exactly, and how does that differ from intelligent automation?
I guess it takes the level of intelligence to increases it by a few notches, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
So what it does is automate more knowledge-intensive processes because there's more AI is involved. So what we see with the typical automation at the moment is still about less complex, simpler processes and tasks being automated. But what we can do now that we're capturing all this intelligence from processes and identifying what could be automated, and what you mentioned earlier about automated process management, the sort of things we were talking at the beginning, there's increasing intelligence in all of these technologies. So with execution automation, it's about automating knowledge-intensive processes and knowing which decision tree path to follow, if depending on what answers you're getting and what kind of interactions you're getting. So you can, for example, first of all, run something like KYP.ai to get the intelligence, the insights. From the insights, decide which processes could be automated, which of the more knowledge-intensive ones. Then work with the experts in those processes to encode that knowledge and then automating that kind of knowledge-intensive process. And it could be that, I think in my blog, I gave an example of somebody working in pensions, which can be very complicated because there are so many different types of pensions. So knowing where to look up the information, what kind of rules apply to the pension and what tax and other benefits apply, it can be very complicated and you really have to know your pension rules. But, you can also apply a bit of intelligent solution that can do some of that assessment of requirements and identification of this is this kind of pension, these rules apply, and then answering the client. So it's the more advanced stages of all moving further forward towards the autonomous enterprise.
Great example. That really brings it to life. Thank you for that. Well, Sarah, I'd like to wrap up by talking about a huge honor that you recently received. The Global Sourcing Association, or GSA, recently awarded you with their Analyst Influencer of the Year Professional Award, which is fantastic. Tell us more about that.
Well, I was absolutely honored to receive it. I think it was to do with certainly with the book, some of the concepts that I've discussed in the book, and I've been doing a lot of talks about it. And, I talked at the GSA as well. And some of the work and thought leadership that I'm doing about concepts like productivity mining, like execution automation, and basically helping customers and the readership see where things are heading. And I think I was really, really incredibly honored to receive it, and I'm very grateful for it.
Well, it's fantastic. I mean, that's a high honor, and congratulations. And Sarah, with that, we will wrap up our discussion today. I've truly enjoyed talking with you. It's great to learn about another great use case for AI in the business setting, productivity mining. I didn't know that existed until I met you. It's really a fascinating space, and I look forward to learning more about that. I also look forward to reading your book. So congrats on that. I wish you much success with it. And thanks again for being here.
Well, thank you very much for having me. A real pleasure to talk to you about these exciting topics.
Thanks for tuning in to Transform Now. For more insightful discussions on digital transformation and more, check out our podcast channel where you'll find all of our previous episodes. And to make sure you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast player. And if you like what you've heard, please leave us a review. For more information about digital transformation and the future of work, check out blueprism.com to learn how SS&C Blue Prism's digital workforce is enabling enterprise transformation now.